United States and elsewhere. What you've got in Iran is a radical Islamic regime coupled with a nuclear weapons capability. If you take the radical Islamic ideology away and just have the nuclear weapons, maybe you've got Israel. If you take the nuclear weapons away and you keep the radical Islamic ideology, maybe you've got the Afghanistan of the Taliban. But you put the two of them together and you've got a deadly cocktail. The current president of Iran, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, is a believer in the 12th Imam. Have any of you heard about the 12th Imam and know what it's all about? Okay, you're going to get a quick class on the 12th Imam tonight, okay? In Muslim ideology, there are 12 descendants of the Prophet, and after that it kind of goes dark, at least for the Shias. And the 12th Imam, the 12th descendant, occulted himself at the age of 5 in the year Christian era, 941 AD. And he is believed to be hiding in a well, at the bottom of a well. And he will reemerge at the end times after a period of great tribulation, in fact, a worldwide conflagration, a world war. And when the 12th Imam returns, there will be a reign of Islamic justice. The whole world will accept Islam, and everything will be wonderful forever and ever. The problem, of course, is that to bring the return of the 12th Imam, to hasten the return of the 12th Imam, you have to set off a world war. Okay? That is the trigger for bringing the return of the 12th Imam. Now, why do I raise the 12th Imam with you? Is because when Ahmadinejad took over as president in 2005, he said, my role as president of the Islamic Republic of Iran is to hasten the return of the 12th Imam. We have never seen a regime in the history of the modern world that was based on this kind of ideology. Not even Ayatollah Khomeini, who instituted the Islamic Republic of Iran, believed in this. The very first cabinet meeting that Ahmadinejad held in 2005, in August of 2005, he actually circulated at the meeting, 24 ministers, a contract with the 12th Imam. And they dedicated their government to serving him and to bringing about his return on earth. And at the end of the cabinet meeting, after everybody had signed this piece of paper that's being sent around, one cabinet secretary raises his hand and he says, well, Your Excellency, we've all signed this contract with the 12th Imam, but where is he? You know, where are we going to send it? You know, how can he sign the contract with us? Now, Ahmadinejad said, not a problem. We're going to send you down to Jamaran, which is about 60 miles south of Tehran, where the well is located, and you just throw the contract down the well. Okay? And that's what he did. Now, every single speech that he starts, whether it's at the United Nations, whether it's in Iran, or anyplace else, he doesn't use the standard formulas that we've become used to with the Islamic Republic. He starts all of his speeches by saying, may my words and my deeds hasten the return of the 12th Imam. This is a very, very dangerous ideology. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about it today. Now, you will have many people who will tell you, and I'm sure some of you are taking Middle East Studies classes here at the University of Minnesota, you will have professors telling you, as they do in other campuses around the country, that, well, you know, we shouldn't really worry about nuclear weapons in Iran, and Pakistan has nuclear weapons, it's an Islamic country. You know, Israel has nuclear weapons. Iran will become a responsible power if it has nuclear weapons. I would like to show you that Iran is not an ordinary country. We should not think that Iran is like France or Germany or Belgium. You'll see, besides the abominable human rights practices that we see all the time in Tehran, you have this cult of martyrdom. You have this cult of the end of the world eschatology. They do not hesitate to turn the violence, forget about international terrorism for a second, turn the violence on their own people. When the regime took over in 1979, everybody was talking about how horrible the Shah of Iran had been. rights abuses, horrible. The intelligence services were involved in in people's everyday lives. Thousands and thousands of people executed. Well, turns out Amnesty International did a kind of retrospective look at the Shah's 35 years in power, and they discovered that there were 350 people who were either killed as political executions or in extrajudicial murders. 350 in 35 years. In the first 2 months of this regime, there were over 10,000 people who were murdered. And since the regime has been in power, there have been over 100,000 people killed for political crimes. They continue today. This is a more recent one. You can see by the pants that these people are wearing, they're probably Kurds. There were executions just this past week, in fact, of Kurdish human rights activists. So this is an ongoing activity, and the regime likes to stage these events in very public places as a way, as a deterrent to ordinary Iranians to keep them from any kind of political activities against the regime. According to their version of Islamic law, stoning to death is not only allowed, it is required. And in particular, it is required for women who commit adultery. And adultery is a crime under Sharia law where the word of 4 men is required to convict a woman. And believe it or not, it happens much more often than you might think. The woman is buried in concrete up to her neck, and then the Sharia law dictates the size of the stone. If you have stones that are too large, you kill the person outright. If they're too small, they don't do any damage, so they have to be just right. Men, as you see in the bottom picture, are allowed to attempt to escape the stone. And I think there has actually been one instance where a man has escaped stoning. This is a sign that was held up at the United Nations recently in September. I'm going to have a lot to say about this very ordinary man who is now in an extraordinary position. But I want to, again, reiterate a word of caution. The biggest mistake we can make about Iran today is to think that the Islamic Republic is just like any other government, any other regime in the world, and that their leaders use the same logic that we do. And I would argue, and I would suggest that you take a look at the last 20 years of American and Western European policy in light of this argument. I would argue that our entire approach towards Iran has been mistaken because we consider that we can either offer them enough incentives, enough goodies to change the behavior that we don't like, whether it's the nuclear weapons program or international terrorism, or we can raise the price for their bad behavior so high that they will stop what they're doing. So we are thinking in terms of cost and benefit. Our leaders in democratic societies think but that's not the way they think. That's not the way they think. Ayatollah Khomeini reminded people at the very beginning, in 1979, that they were obeying a different logic. The Islamic Revolution obeyed a different logic. Here, in this particular quote, he was being reproached by members of the first government after the taking of U.S. hostages at the U.S. Embassy in Tehran in November of 1979. They said, look, the United States, Great Britain, the United Nations has imposed these crippling economic sanctions on us. Crippling economic sanctions, I think that's a term you're hearing